My beloved child, stop for a moment, because there is something you need to understand before you believe the words someone may have spoken about you. Your looks have changed. You already know it. You have noticed it in the mirror, in photographs, in the way certain people look at you, and perhaps even in the way you look at yourself when nobody else is around. But what you have not yet understood is why the change happened, and what it is trying to reveal to you. There was a time when you could look at yourself and recognize the person you were immediately. You knew your smile. You knew your eyes. You knew the expression that appeared when you were happy. You knew the face that looked back at you when you were hopeful. But lately, something feels different. You may have looked into the mirror and quietly wondered, what happened to me? You may have noticed tiredness where there used to be brightness, seriousness where there used to be innocence, and a strange depth in your eyes that was not there before, and that depth carries a story nobody else can fully see. Someone may have even made a comment that stayed with you longer than they realized. Perhaps they said you do not look the same anymore. Perhaps they compared you to an earlier version of yourself. Perhaps someone looked at an old photograph and said, "You were more beautiful then," without understanding what those words would awaken inside you. But what if the person they were comparing you to no longer exists for a reason? You have changed. But change is not always the loss you think it is. Sometimes the face changes because the heart has survived something. Sometimes the eyes become quieter because they have seen too much. Sometimes the smile becomes softer because you have learned that not every room deserves your joy. Sometimes your appearance changes because your soul has been carrying responsibilities that nobody else could see, and there is a reason you have been noticing this transformation now. You may have spent nights wondering whether you are becoming less attractive. You may compare yourself with photographs from years ago. You may scroll through old memories and wonder where that version of you disappeared. You may look at people who seem to glow effortlessly and secretly ask why you no longer feel that way, but there is a question you have not asked yourself yet, and that question changes everything. What if you are not becoming less beautiful? What if you are becoming less familiar? What if you are finally seeing yourself without the innocence that once made you ignore what was happening around you? Because there was a version of you who trusted almost everyone. There was a version of you who smiled even when something felt wrong. There was a version of you who believed promises because you wanted them to be true. There was a version of you who gave people endless chances because you believed your kindness could change them, and that version of you was beautiful, but that version of you was also exhausted. You did not lose your beauty, you lost the need to pretend, and that is why your face may look different now. There is a strange kind of beauty that appears after disappointment. It does not announce itself. It does not demand attention. It does not need compliments. It simply exists in the quiet strength of someone who has learned how to stand again after being broken. You may not recognize that beauty because you are searching for the old one. You are looking for the brightness of yesterday while heaven may be preparing you to recognize the depth of tomorrow. There are people who only recognize beauty when it is young, effortless, smiling, and easy to admire. They do not know how to recognize beauty that has survived grief. They do not know how to recognize eyes that have cried and still chosen hope. They do not know how to recognize a person who has been disappointed and still refuses to become cruel, but someone does. Someone has been watching you change, and what they have noticed is not what you think. They have noticed that your silence has become stronger. They have noticed that you no longer react to every little thing. They have noticed that you do not chase people the way you once did. They have noticed that you can walk away now. They have noticed that you can hear something painful without immediately falling apart. And there is one person who has been particularly surprised by this transformation because they remember exactly who you used to be. They remember the person who once wanted their approval. They remember the person who waited for their attention. They remember the person who could be hurt by one cold sentence. They remember the person who would have done almost anything to keep a certain relationship alive, but that person is not standing where you are now, and they are beginning to realize it. At first, they thought your distance was temporary, then they thought you were angry. Then they thought someone had influenced you, but eventually they realized something much more uncomfortable. You had simply changed. You stopped needing what they used to give you. You stopped asking for what they were unwilling to offer. You stopped measuring your worth through their eyes. And when that happened, something inside them became unsettled, because people sometimes appreciate your beauty most when they believe they have access to it. They become comfortable with your attention, comfortable with your affection, comfortable with your forgiveness, comfortable with your presence. Then one day, you become quiet, you stop explaining, you stop reaching, you stop waiting. And suddenly they look at you differently, not because you became less beautiful, but because they can no longer control the way you see yourself. That is why you must be careful about believing someone who says, "You are not as beautiful as you used to be." They may not be describing your appearance at all. They may be describing the fact that you are no longer as easy to influence. There is a hidden cruelty in comparing someone's present face with their past. People forget that every line, every tired expression, every change in the eyes can represent something that person survived. They see the surface and forget the journey, but you know the journey, you know the nights you stayed awake. You know the mornings when you had to pretend you were fine. You know how many times you swallowed words because you did not want to hurt someone. You know how many times you smiled when your heart was asking for rest. You know how many times you prayed for strength because you had no idea how you would make it through another day. And perhaps that is why your face carries something now that it did not carry before: truth. There is a kind of beauty that cannot exist until illusion disappears. You used to look at people and see what you hoped they would become. Now you see what they actually are. You used to hear promises and imagine futures. Now you watch actions. You used to believe every apology. Now you look for change. You used to think losing someone meant losing everything. Now you understand that sometimes losing someone is the beginning of finding yourself, and that understanding has changed your entire presence. Your face may be different, your style may be different, your energy may be different, your smile may come less often, but when it comes, it means something. Your eyes may not shine the way they did when you were unaware of certain truths, but they carry Something far more valuable now. They carry discernment, and someone is about to notice it. There is a person who has not seen you for some time. When they see you again, they may be surprised. They may expect the old version of you. They may expect the same smile, the same reactions, the same softness, the same availability, but instead, they will encounter someone who has learned to protect what is precious, and their first reaction may not be what you expect. They may stare, they may become quiet, they may ask whether you are okay, they may say you look different, and when they say it, you may wonder whether they mean it as an insult. But watch their eyes. Because the mouth can hide confusion, while the eyes often reveal recognition, they may not be seeing ugliness. They may be seeing distance. They may be seeing maturity. They may be seeing a person who no longer needs their approval. And that realization may hurt them more than they expected, because somewhere in their mind, they believed they would always have a certain place in your heart. They believed time would preserve the old connection. They believed you would remain emotionally available no matter what happened. But time did something they did not expect. Time changed you. And now there is something they want to know. They want to know who changed you. They may suspect another person. They may think you found someone else. They may wonder whether someone entered your life and taught you to see yourself differently. But the truth is much deeper. You changed because you finally met yourself. Not the version of yourself that existed for approval. Not the version that tried to be beautiful enough to be chosen. Not the version that constantly asked, "Am I enough?" You met the version of yourself that whispered, "Even if nobody chooses you, you still have value." And that whisper became stronger than every rejection you had ever received. You may not realize how powerful that transformation is. For years, you may have thought beauty was something other people confirmed. A compliment made you feel beautiful. A romantic message made you feel desirable. Someone's attention made you feel important.